Are these two inching ever closer? The gap no longer a continental divide, more the few kilometres that separate Britain from the European Union. So, if there is a trade deal at the very last minute, who has won and who has lost in this battle of the wills? You're watching Roundtable. Hello from me, David Foster. Was Boris Johnson's threat to break international law just a negotiation tactic? And if still there is no deal, what will the impact be?
The deadline for Brexit trade negotiations is getting close. At stake is the future relationship between the UK and EU, and any deal must be decided by the 15th of October, says British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The talks are aimed at deciding a range of issues, including trade, the regulation of medicines, and security cooperation. But they have been far from straightforward. The main disagreements between the two sides were over state aid and fishing rights. Then last month, the UK caused uproar by threatening to break international law by going back on part of the Brexit divorce deal with the EU. That was a September surprise. So will these crucial weeks in October bring about a final agreement?
I'm very pleased to say that we can welcome to this round table Denis MacShane in London, former Minister for Europe 2002 to 2005 and author of Brexit, How Britain Left Europe, and more recently Brexiternity, which it seems to be. Catherine McBride, independent economist and fellow of the Centre for Brexit Policy. We welcome you back, Catherine, and we say hello for the first time to Pervez Ghauri, Professor in International Business at Birmingham University. I'm going to ask each one of you in turn, keep it brief if you would, whether you think a deal is possible or not. So, Denis, you first of all, deal or no deal?
Deal. I've been arguing this much of the year for political reasons. There are going to be lots of disagreements, but I don't think the Prime Minister wants to go into 2021 with 50-kilometre lorry queues in Kent, with the Scottish elections coming up. And if he does badly in those and the SNP clean the pool, which they will if we have this Dominic Cummings crash-out Brexit, then the future of the United Kingdom is in peril.
Catherine, deal or no deal?
A brief deal in goods and services, hopefully financial services included. For the opposite reason, I think that it is the EU's manufacturing and rural agricultural sectors who have the most to gain by doing that deal, and that is what they will want to do. I do not fear a crash out, as Denis likes to call it, WTO Brexit, as I like to call it, for the UK. I think that will be fine. But I do think that they will come to some agreement on a very simple trade and services deal. And
so both of you say there'll be a deal. Denis says because the UK has more to lose. You, Catherine, think it's the EU that perhaps has more to lose. Pervez, from a business point of view, what do you think? Will it happen?
Yes, I think there has to be a deal. If you think about a little bit being rational, then there has to be a deal because both parties need it. And I agree with Denis that UK needs it more because UK's trade with the EU is much bigger in volume and value than EU trade with UK. So I think UK needs a deal, and more badly than EU needs.
And Denis, why has it become? Oh, so sorry, Pervez. Carry on.
Because this has been a typical negotiation, because parties were far away down here and they have slowly been coming closer. And I think this is the week that you have to strike a deal, because all these discussion about lorries and all this discussion about going back on already agreed agreements, etc. These are part of negotiation tactics and
this is what I was going to say to Denis. Brexiternity, your book that's come out in the last 12 months or so, Denis, was it always going to be like this?
Yes. Look, the Irish question was first defined by Benjamin Disraeli in the House of Commons in 1844. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but he said we've got a problem with Ireland. We didn't really solve it until 1998. Our relationship with Europe, it's been problematic for 1,000 years. And the idea that getting Brexit done, whatever that means, solves it is wrong. We haven't got time, or we've got other distinguished guests, but there's so many other issues just on the boiling plate, digital access, security information, the rights of Brits living in Europe, so many satellite transmissions, surveillance, sat-navs, none of which are going to be solved by this deal, and certainly won't be a deal for financial services. So we'll wake up again on January the 1st, the 2nd, and oh my God, it's back to more talks.
So, Catherine, how far have we come? If there is a deal, is it just as Denis is perhaps suggesting, just a fig leaf?
Well, I think that in any negotiation, you start by going through common ground. And I think there was always common ground on goods and services crossing from one side to the other. Just the EU decided they'd try and push it and get a little bit more. But unfortunately, your previous speaker was wrong. The UK buys a lot more goods from the EU than we sell to them. We have a trade deficit of 125 billion euros with Europe. So that and we don't trade evenly across all 27 countries. We trade specifically with about 9, but in some areas, there's about 4 countries which will be very badly affected if we leave without a deal. One of
their
those
pain
is,
would be
course,
far
Ireland.
greater, you think, than the UK's pain if there were no deal.
Well, Irish beef farmers, half of their products go to the UK. Okay, they have geared up. It's a tiny country with only 5 million people, and they supply a much bigger country with 65 million people. There was recently a report in the BBC about the price of Irish cheddar going up. Well, of course, most cheddar is made in the UK. There isn't really a big market for cheddar in continental Europe. So people in Ireland making cheddar for the UK market will have to eat those 48% tariffs if they don't strike a deal. So,
Catherine, it looks like the tide's coming in a little bit because you're lifting those bits of paper up and half obscuring.
Sorry. I had all the numbers. I just wanted to make sure I read out the right.
Well, thank you. We're very informal here. We're very informal.
Okay.
Pervez, British business. If there were to be no deal, I mean, you've got the prospect warned by a government minister of these 7,000 lorries queuing up to get out of the UK, permits to get into the county of Kent, which is where the border would be, or the Channel Tunnel, etc., etc. What would have been the effect on?
I think if there is,
what will be if it doesn't happen?
So, supposing that there is no deal, if that is the situation, then of course there will be lots of problems considering the queues for the lorries and all the other things. But I can agree to that UK imports much more than it exports maybe. But the problem is that then who will suffer? Then when the medicines are not coming through, the gasoline is not coming through, the electricity supply power is not coming through, and number of agriculture products are not coming through, then of course UK will have bigger problems. So that is one issue. Second is that when we talk about trade, we don't talk about one way going or one way coming. We talk about the accumulative trade. So trade, as far as trade is concerned, buying and selling, UK's 40% of UK's trade is with EU, while for EU it is only 7% of their total trade is with the UK. So I think that if there is no deal, there will be big problems, at least for the first 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, if we could just look at this graphic that we're going to bring up on screen about where does the average Britain's food come from. 53% from the UK, 28% from the European Union, only 19% from the rest of the world combined. It shows, with more than 50% coming from this country, that if production was ramped up, it would not necessarily be a case in terms of the amount of food available in this country, just the type of food. Is that fair, Catherine?
Yes, I think you've got to also look if your figures are value or volume. A lot of people like to use value, but that includes very expensive EU branded food, such as expensive olive oils or Parmesan cheese, or, French wine is included in those figures. Champagne is included in those figures. So it looks like it's a lot more. But if your real question is, will we starve to death? No, we won't, because A, everything we can get from Europe, we can get from elsewhere. And B, the UK produces a huge amount of its own food. They produce over 80% of their own beef. They produce 90% of their own chicken. They produce 100% of dairy. In fact, 106%. They export milk to other countries in Europe. They produce only 60% of pork is produced in the UK. So we will have to find another pork provider. But the US is happy to step in there. And only vegetables. We get a lot from Holland, but most of those can come from Africa if we had to. And fruit is something we don't supply a lot of, but that is because of the fruit we eat. Because obviously a lot of fruit that people have grown used to having, even in winter, isn't grown in the UK. So if you want to have strawberries in winter, you're going to be importing them from outside Europe.
So Denis, it just sounds like our childhood, really, doesn't it?
It's wonderful,
when you go down the pub,
yes,
you get a slice of wet ham, a tasteless tomato, and you couldn't get a strawberry in November.
Yes, we have no bananas. We have no bananas today. I mean, it's really back to my 1950s childhood, this picture that dear old Catherine is painting. Let's be quite clear. When we talk about Ireland exporting all the mints, just about all the mints we eat in Sainsbury's or Morrison's.
Not all.
Not all, but most of it. That actually...
No, not even most of it.
No, that... Forgive me, Catherine, I've got the figures too.
Okay.
That all comes from Northern Irish cows, British cows. And the cheddar cheese, all the hard cheddar that we eat, not all cheddar cheese, of course, but the hard cheddar comes from Northern Irish cows' milk, sent into Europe, the Republic of Ireland, which has got some of the most advanced now agro-processing companies in the world, and shipped back to here under free trade terms. Now, let's walk away from this idea that there could or should be tariffs. I hope there won't. If there are, there'll also be checks. There are 10,000 lorries going through Dover and Folkestone, the Eurotunnel, every day. Just a cursory 2-minute check. Show me your papers, show me your rules of origin, open the boot. Do 10,000 by 2 and see how long it's going to take.
Let's talk about tariffs a little bit. Catherine, I'll let you come back in just a moment, if I may, but I want to throw this one to Pervez, if I can, on the business and manufacturing side. Gary Young from the National Institute of Economic and Social Research put this down. Any benefits from reducing tariffs on imports from outside the EU would be more than offset by the costs arising from a loss of access to the EU single market. Of course, this is if there is no deal, and customs union. It would damage our exports, leading to a depreciation of the pound that would raise inflation and hit living standards in the UK. So, tariffs, Pervez, what would that have meant? What might it mean?
Yeah, of course, there will be more tariffs, and not only tariffs, but also, as you already mentioned, the manufacturing cost in UK will go up, even if we keep on manufacturing, and even if we can buy components from other parts of the world, but the price will be different. Price will not be the same, because now from Europe it is tariff free. If we buy from somewhere else, there will be tariffs on it. So whether it is from America or whether it is from Morocco agriculture products, or whether it is from Africa or whatever, but then you will have to pay tariffs. And first, number one, so that means our manufacturing will become more expensive as compared to what it is today. So
and how's that going to hurt exports? Because prices will have to go up to cover costs?
Yeah, prices have to go up. So there is double whammy, because on the one hand, the pound value will go down, which we have seen over the years because of Brexit and other things. The pound value will go down, and that means anything we have to buy from abroad, we have to pay more pounds than we pay today. So there are many things there, the per pound value, the tariffs, how far away things have to come from, transportation cost, and these type of things. So naturally, tariffs will be much higher, and no country is just waiting to have free trade deal with us. All those.
Well, let's go into that in just a moment, if we may. I rudely interrupted Catherine, so please say what you wanted to say, and then I'm going to start talking about the rest of the world, if I may.
Well, I just wanted to say that there is no tariff on parts. The UK government has published its most favoured nation tariff schedule. You can find that on the internet. There will be no tariffs on parts, so what you've just heard isn't true. And also the lorries that are going back and forward, the ones going back to Europe are mainly empty, or a third of them are empty. So they won't have big checks. The lorries coming in will be checked if they're not sort of most favoured nation, depending on what they're bringing in. Probably animal products, I expect there'll be SPS checks, but that's under the control of the UK government. So
SPS
it wouldn't be in the government's
sanitary checks,
yes,
safety
health
checks
and
on
plant health, basically. Yeah. But it
so
wouldn't be in our government's best interest to keep food out of our country, if you like. Why would we do that? We don't want to starve our own population.
So let me ask this one, Catherine, for you, and then Denis as well. If we have a free trade deal with the European Union, how will that affect any other deals that the UK wants to make around the world?
Well, it would depend if we sign up to their SPS regulations or any other level playing field regulations. It could be much harder to do a deal with other countries, which is why the government is not going to do that. And if you look at the fact that we've already signed a deal with the Japanese, it would be crazy now to sign up to follow European regulations. But it is in European producers' best interest to keep selling to us. So they should be quite happy if we're prepared to buy their things. But we certainly would be crazy to attempt to keep out other countries' goods.
I'm just wondering, Denis, whether in fact this is referencing the much quoted chlorinated chicken that the US apparently wants to sell to Britain. Will the European Union stop that happening?
I think the British public will stop it happening. I mean, let me be clear. I have eaten chickens and steaks and sausages in America all my adult life, but I'm not yet dead. Nonetheless, the Centre for Disease Control in America reports that 1 in 6 Americans suffer a foodborne illness every year. It's about 48 million, with a lot of hospitalizations and deaths. Don't have to go into the details, because continental America does allow a huge injection of chemicals. Chlorine is less important, particularly into pig manufacturing, that frankly, I just think you'll see demonstrations outside every supermarket if Sainsbury's or Tesco try and impose this food on us. The Tories have said again and again, ministers are at odds. The free trade, Brexit keenies like Liz Truss say, oh yeah, there'll be a food deal with America. And the Minister of Agriculture says, absolutely not. We are not going to betray British farmers. How you resolve that, I genuinely do not know. So I wouldn't hold out much hopes. I don't think it's going to be a deal soon. I think it'll go on into November. Quite important will be the outcome of the US election, because Brexit and Trump were both born in the same year, 2016. They're the kind of Siamese twin of 2016, nationalist, populist, anti-immigrant. Well, they're but generally, if Joe Biden wins, that means you take a saw and saw off the Trump half of the Siamese twin, and the rump that's left, or the runt that's left, I think will be a pretty sorry spectacle. Joe Biden's made it so clear he's not going to allow anything to damage the Northern Ireland peace deal, which, of course, Mr. Johnson's proposal to be voted tonight will do.
Yeah, this is where I wanted to get to. Boris Johnson's suggestion that Denis has just referred to, that he could alter parts of the withdrawal agreement, particularly relating to Ireland and Northern Ireland. Catherine, do you think that was just a negotiation tactic?
Well, I think it was a negotiating tactic, but I also think he should do that. In fact, I think he should throw out the whole withdrawal agreement completely and start again. It's a very bad agreement for the UK. It was signed by Theresa May, who obviously now wanted to stay in the EU. So she's signed us up to a whole lot of things we shouldn't be signed up to. I think that the Democrats may have been trying to win the votes of the Boston Irish when Nancy Pelosi and Biden came out with this. But if they look a bit more closely at the states that will really benefit from a trade deal with the UK, which would include Wisconsin, which the Democrats really want to win back because they lost it to Trump in the 2016 election. Wisconsin is one massive dairy farm who could supply us with all of not only the cheddar, also the brie and the parmesan and a whole lot of things that come from Europe, because European farmers went to Wisconsin in the 1800s and started making exactly the same cheeses they made at home. So that if the Democrats want they've got to work out where their votes are and what they want. And I don't think the Boston Irish are in doubt. I think they're voting Democrat. So I think the Democrats should really look at UK farmers, not US farmers, rather, because they're unlikely to be voting
When it comes
Democrat.
to what Boris Johnson said about Northern Ireland and the Irish agreement and a border in the Irish Sea, were you frightened at that point that a deal might be unachievable?
Yeah, that is true. About a month ago or so, 4 weeks ago, we were getting away from each other. It looked like as if the parties are getting away from each other because the rhetoric used was not very friendly, and so on. But I do believe that was negotiation tactics, and maybe we will know this week whether it has paid off or not. But the thing is that the Northern Ireland support in America is across both parties. So it's not a question of Democrats or Republicans. So both parties have strong support for Irish agreement, and they believe, Americans believe, that they were part of that deal. So that's why.
Indeed, Denis, do you think therefore we are likely to see any more brinkmanship of that ilk?
Yes, I think there's a very important article in Der Spiegel, the German paper today, by the Europe minister. You're seeing now many more senior politicians. Here in this country, we bang on and on about Michel Barnier, but actually it's politicians now who are saying what Mr. Johnson is proposing is unacceptable. If the Brits want to fall off the cliff, that is their business, but stop lecturing us. We didn't ask you to hold your referendum. It was your decision. And you're now seeing, I think, a sense that Britain has to decide what to do. I had no idea that Theresa May negotiated the agreement. I thought Boris Johnson came back last autumn patting himself on the back or on his belly saying, I won the most marvellous agreement. It's an oven-ready deal and everybody should vote for me in the general election. And they all did. So I think trying to blame Theresa May for this deal is a bit silly. It's a Boris Johnson deal. But the great thing about Boris is he's a journalist. He's not really a statesman. And journalists can change their copy up to the last minute. Let's just wait and see. But I think it's going to be, slightly disagree with Pervez. I don't think it's going to be done and dusted in the next week or two or even in October. I think this will go on a bit longer. I could be wrong.
Eternity, Denis, as you said in your book. So, Catherine, as we're getting towards the end of the programme, if there is a deal, will it be a happy marriage?
Yes, I think it will be because in the long run, they just really want to trade with each other. And the EU once needed to try and discourage the others. But I think with the COVID situation and with the mutualisation of debt across the EU, I think that is less of a worry for the EU right now. I would like to say that Denis is right, that it was Boris's deal, but it has a lot of the May deal still in it that Boris didn't take out. But the north-south border in Ireland is very underused. In 2016, there were 750,000 trips across the border taking goods from north to south, and only 400,000 going from south to north, and that's in a whole year. And there are 300 ways to cross the border, which comes down to about 7 crossings if they were evenly spread. So that I just think that basing a whole agreement on that tiny border that's hardly used, as was pointed out earlier, there are 10,000 crossings at Dover. So in a
we also
day.
know that
So
the
why
whole
we're worrying
question
about
of Ireland and the peace agreement, the Good Friday Agreement, 1998, etc., after hundreds of years of dispute and 20, 30 years of conflict, is the one thing nobody wants to upset. Sorry if I described it as possibly a happy marriage coming up, because of course it has been a divorce. Perhaps better to think of it as a reasonable post-marriage settlement that sort of pleases both parties. I'm very pleased to had you all on the programme. Thank you very much indeed. We are pretty much out of time. Denis MacShane, Catherine McBride and Pervez, thank you very much for joining us for the very first time. We appreciate you watching this programme wherever you happen to be. So from me, David Foster, and from the rest of the Roundtable team, it is goodbye for now. We hope to have your company next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.